What happens when extreme wealth meets absolute justice? Three words changed everything. Three words that would destroy a business empire, end a marriage, and prove that some insults demand justice money cannot buy. But before I tell you what those three words were, you need to understand who said them and why what happened next became the most talked about courtroom moment in Providence history. I am Francesco Frank Caprio, and in 38 years on this bench I've seen every form of arrogance, but nothing prepared me for what walked into my courtroom that Tuesday morning in October. Victoria Sterling Blackwood, 47 years old, wife of pharmaceutical mogul Harrison Blackwood, worth $4 billion. Victoria herself controlled a luxury real estate empire, owned a private jet, maintained homes across 3 states. But here's what money couldn't buy her that morning: respect for the law she was about to violate in the most spectacular way imaginable. The case seemed routine. Victoria had received a citation for driving 63 miles per hour through a school zone. The speed limit was 25. Security footage showed her silver Bentley blazing past the crossing guard, missing elementary school children by mere feet. According to the police report, when informed she'd endangered children, Victoria replied, "Those children should learn to stay out of the road when important people are driving." Important people. That phrase haunted me as I prepared for what I assumed would be a straightforward traffic hearing. The courtroom was packed that morning. Victoria entered like royalty, granting an audience to peasants. Her Chanel suit, Louboutin heels, and designer jewelry caught every light. But it wasn't the luxury that filled the room, it was the attitude. "Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, you're charged with excessive speeding in a school zone. How do you plead?" She removed her designer sunglasses with deliberate slowness. "Your Honor, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I shouldn't be here at all." The courtroom fell silent. In nearly 4 decades on this bench, I'd never heard someone simply declare they shouldn't be present for their own hearing. "Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, you received a legal citation. This hearing is mandatory. How do you plead?" Victoria sighed. "Your Honor, my husband's company employs 12,000 people. Our foundation donated $8 million to Rhode Island causes last year. I was rushing to receive a humanitarian award for helping disadvantaged children. Surely citation of someone like me is counterproductive." The audacity was breathtaking. She'd endangered real children while rushing to receive an award for helping others. "Your charitable work doesn't exempt you from traffic laws. Do you plead guilty or not guilty?" Victoria laughed, genuinely amused. "Your Honor, you're missing the bigger picture. People like me keep this community functioning. When you cite someone like me, you're punishing the very people who make your salary possible." The gallery stirred restlessly. She'd just suggested her wealth made her immune to laws everyone else had to follow. "What I'm suggesting is we resolve this quickly so I can return to activities that actually matter. Perhaps a small fine I can pay immediately, and we can move on." More important things. She just told a courtroom full of citizens that their legal system was less important than her business activities. I asked the clerk to display the security camera footage. The video was damning. Victoria's Bentley speeding through the school zone, children clearly visible, a near miss that could have been tragedy. "Having seen this footage, do you still maintain your actions were appropriate?" "Your Honor, I maintained complete control. No one was actually hurt. We're discussing hypothetical outcomes, but here's where Victoria made the mistake that would destroy everything. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, I've given you multiple opportunities to show remorse for endangering children. Instead, you've lectured me about your importance. Do you understand why this court finds your attitude concerning?" Victoria's composure, which had been cracking gradually throughout the hearing, finally shattered completely, but not into remorse or self-reflection, into pure, undiluted rage that someone had dared question her righteousness. Her face flushed red beneath her perfectly applied makeup. Her hands, which had been gesturing elegantly throughout her speech, now clenched into fists. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she looked genuinely angry rather than merely annoyed. "Your Honor," she said, her voice rising above the respectful tone expected in court, "I've tried to be respectful here, but you don't understand how important people operate." Important people. There was that phrase again. delivered with even more venom than before. I contribute more to this community than most people here will in their entire lives. I employ hundreds directly and thousands indirectly. My tax payments probably fund this courthouse. She was building towards something, her anger making her increasingly reckless. In the gallery, people leaned forward, sensing that something unprecedented was about to happen. Her attorney was frantically trying to signal her to stop talking, but Victoria was beyond listening to anyone. So when you lecture me about attitude, when you waste my time with procedures that serve no purpose, she paused, taking what I somehow knew would be the breath that preceded something irreversible. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. You need to understand something, Your Honor. People like you are basically worthless bureaucrats. The words hung in the air like a slap. The courtroom erupted, not with noise, but with the kind of shocked silence that follows a physical blow. The gallery collectively gasped. Court staff exchanged glances of disbelief. Even the bailiff took an involuntary step forward. Victoria Sterling Blackwood, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, had just called a sitting judge worthless in open court. But the dam had burst, and years of accumulated arrogance came pouring out like water through a broken levee. You sit behind that bench collecting a government salary while people like me create actual value. You've probably never signed the front of a paycheck or been responsible for anyone except yourself. You've never built anything, never created a single job, never contributed anything meaningful to society. The insult was so comprehensive, so deliberately crafted to demean not just me but the entire judicial system, that several people in the gallery audibly gasped. I generate more economic activity in a day than this entire courtroom represents in a year. So yes, when you delay me with petty procedures over a minor traffic incident, you are wasting the time of someone whose time actually matters. Worthless. Minor traffic incident. Time that actually matters. She'd systematically insulted the judge, minimized child endangerment, and declared herself superior to the entire legal system. What Victoria didn't understand was that she had just crossed a line that wealthy people rarely encounter, the line beyond which money cannot protect you. I stood up slowly from my bench. When I stand during a proceeding, veteran court watchers know something significant is about to happen. Victoria misinterpreted this as uncertainty or intimidation, which only emboldened her further. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, I said, my voice carrying 38 years of judicial authority, did you just call this court worthless? I called you a worthless bureaucrat, Your Honor, and I stand by that assessment. The honesty was breathtaking. She'd not only insulted me, but doubled down when given the opportunity to retreat. I see, I said quietly. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, you've just demonstrated the most profound contempt for judicial authority I've witnessed in nearly 4 decades on this bench. Victoria's lawyer finally stood up, his face pale with professional terror. Your Honor, my client is under tremendous stress and doesn't mean— Counselor, I interrupted, my voice cutting through his plea like a blade. Your client has made her position crystal clear. Please sit down. I walked around from behind the bench, eliminating the physical distance between judge and defendant. This was my signature move when someone had pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, you've called me worthless. You've suggested that your wealth makes you immune to laws designed to protect children. You've declared that your time matters more than the safety of elementary school students. You've reduced the entire legal system to bureaucratic inconvenience. Victoria lifted her chin defiantly, her arrogance still intact despite the magnitude of her mistake. I've stated facts, Your Honor. Facts. She genuinely believed her insults represented objective reality rather than the delusional ramblings of someone drunk on their own wealth and power. Very well, I said, my voice taking on the tone that had intimidated seasoned attorneys for decades. Since you believe this court is worthless, let me show you exactly how much power this worthless bureaucrat actually wields. What happened next would become legendary in Rhode Island legal history and cost Victoria Sterling Blackwood everything she thought money could protect. I returned to my bench and opened a thick file that had been sitting there throughout the hearing. Victoria's confidence flickered for the first time as she realized I'd been prepared for this confrontation long before she'd walked into my courtroom. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, since you've questioned this court's authority and relevance, I took the liberty of conducting thorough research into your business empire and public record. Victoria's face went pale. She clearly hadn't expected her personal affairs to be scrutinized by someone she'd just called worthless. Your real estate company, Sterling Properties, is currently under investigation by the Rhode Island Attorney General's Office for housing code violations affecting over 200 low-income tenants. The color drained completely from Victoria's face. This wasn't public information yet. The IRS has flagged your charitable foundation for potential tax fraud related to inflated donation values and questionable administrative expenses that suggest more money went to administrative costs than actual charitable work. Victoria tried to speak, but I continued with devastating precision. The Securities and Exchange Commission has opened a preliminary investigation into your husband's pharmaceutical company for potential insider trading related to drug trial results that were leaked before public announcement. Each revelation hit Victoria like a physical blow. Her empire of wealth was built on foundations far more fragile than she'd ever admitted to herself. And perhaps most relevant to today's proceeding, the Rhode Island Department of Transportation has been investigating multiple complaints about a silver Bentley speeding through school zones across Providence. Your vehicle, Mrs. Sterling Blackwood. Victoria's hands trembled as the scope of her legal exposure became crystal clear. So when you call this court worthless, you're insulting the same system that will determine your fate in multiple criminal proceedings. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, for excessive speeding in a school zone while endangering children, I find you guilty. Standard fine is $500. Given your contempt for child safety, I'm imposing the maximum $2,500 plus court costs. Victoria's mouth opened in shock. Furthermore, for calling this judge worthless, I'm imposing an additional $5,000 for contempt of court. Additionally, your license is suspended for 1 year. You'll complete 300 hours of community service in school safety programs, learning why protecting children matters more than your schedule. But the real destruction was just beginning. I'm recommending the Attorney General prioritize their investigation into your business practices. I'm recommending the IRS expedite their audit of your charitable foundation. I'm directing comprehensive safety audits of all school zones, focusing on repeat offenders who believe status grants immunity. Finally, I'm forwarding a transcript of today's proceedings to every judge in Rhode Island so they'll understand exactly what respect you have for judicial authority. Victoria stood frozen, her arrogance completely shattered. Your Honor, please, I didn't mean... You meant every word. You called me worthless. You suggested wealth makes you above the law. You declared your time matters more than children's safety. Court is adjourned. The aftermath became the most watched judicial proceeding in Rhode Island history. The video went viral within hours, viewed millions of times worldwide. Within weeks, every investigation I'd mentioned proceeded at maximum speed. Victoria's real estate company faced over $2 million in fines for housing violations. The IRS audit revealed massive tax fraud in her charitable foundation. The SEC investigation destroyed her husband's pharmaceutical company, resulting in criminal charges and their subsequent divorce. Victoria's empire collapsed under regulatory scrutiny. Her charitable foundation was dissolved, assets redirected to legitimate organizations. Their social circle abandoned them immediately. Country clubs revoked memberships. Victoria discovered that money couldn't buy back a destroyed reputation. 6 months later, Victoria appeared before me to show proof of community service completion. Gone was the arrogant socialite who'd called me worthless. In her place stood a genuinely humbled woman. Your Honor, she said with authentic humility, I want to apologize not just for my words, but for the person I was when I spoke them. Working with children in safety programs showed me what really matters. Those children taught me more about character in 6 months than I'd learned in 47 years of privilege. I nodded approvingly. Mrs. Sterling Blackwood, transformation through service is the most meaningful form of justice. Victoria's story became a cautionary tale in law schools nationwide. She continued volunteer work long after her sentence, founding a legitimate school safety organization with complete transparency. Victoria's 3 words, worthless bureaucrat, cost her everything because they revealed complete contempt for the system protecting us all from people who believe rules don't apply to them. Sometimes the most important verdicts remind everyone that character matters more than capital, and respect for the law isn't optional for anyone, regardless of net worth. Justice served, empire destroyed, lesson learned.